Greetings, everybody. I'm joined by the Hearthstone America's champion. It is Amnesiac from Boston, Massachusetts. I just want to ask him some follow-up questions shortly after his victory. So, Amnesiac, you separate yourself not only from the 8 players here, but hundreds, if not thousands, of players in your region. Can you give me a couple of reasons why you think your play and your decks were special compared to others?
Well, I think my play throughout preliminaries and here was overall very solid. I definitely made some mistakes, but overall I'm pretty happy. I don't think I made too many glaring ones. I didn't throw too many games or anything like that. So I think I did all the decks I chose to bring both times justice. And then I think a lot of where I got ahead was deck preparation. I would say going into preliminaries, I was really confident. I had a really good idea of what the overall metagame would be. And as a result, I brought really strong counter decks, and that worked out very well for me. And then here, I was less sure. I had to go out on a limb a bit more, bringing some more unique decks like Murloc Paladin. But overall, I think I had a good read on both metagames, which were very different for preliminaries and here. And I think that's one of the big reasons why I was able to win this weekend.
I think a lot of people are also extremely surprised considering that even on Team Archon, you're not necessarily on the spotlight a lot because you balance school and Hearthstone as well as your other sports activities. Can you break down what exactly that balance is? How much time are you spending playing Hearthstone and preparing for these tournaments versus doing other real-life obligations?
Well, for a tournament like this, it's obviously really important, and there's a lot of upside to winning. Like, I get quite a bit of money, and I also get a direct seat to BlizzCon, which is a really, really big deal. So something like this is a pretty high priority for me, whereas if it's just an open tournament or maybe some small invitational, I might just decline it because school is my biggest priority at the end of the day.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, as the champion, you mentioned it yourself, you are going straight to BlizzCon. Congratulations. However, you're not obligated to play in spring and also the summer seasons. You mentioned that you're still exactly not sure about how you're going to compete. Can we expect to see more of you in the spring and summer?
I mean, it would be pretty cool to go to spring and summer and just have no pressure. Like that, I feel like I'd play really well, and I'd just have a lot of fun hanging out with the same guys. I had a lot of fun when I went to DC last time with all the guys. So you'll probably see me at one of the two. Probably, maybe not both. If I can go to spring, I mean, I'll probably go to summer because I wouldn't have school. But you'll probably see me in at least one of them.
Awesome. I'm going to ask a couple pickup questions here. Specifically with your deck preparation, you chose to bring these unique decks. Can you explain why exactly you chose to bring each one and what it was supposed to do for the tournament?
Well, the weird thing about the field of the players here was more of these players bought Reno Lock to preliminaries and qualified than they did Zoo. And Murloc Paladin is very, very favored against every type of Reno Lock, as well as just overall most control decks, except for Freeze Mage, which kind of isn't a control deck. But there was just a lot of control in the format, and Murloc Paladin is one of the best decks in the game to punish control. So I looked at the field, and I thought, I can probably get away with this kind of greedy deck that doesn't do as well against things like Aggro Shaman, which is just an abysmal matchup. But only 2 people brought Shaman, 1 player brought Zoo to the tournament, so my read actually paid off quite nicely. I wound up getting the Murloc Paladin banned a lot, and that was another thing. It's a pretty high priority ban in a control lineup, so then Druid gets to get played, and Druid's pretty strong against control as well. So it gave me 2 high priority bans and gave me basically a free win against most control lineups.
And can you talk about the Warrior and why you chose to bring control? A lot of people were favoring Patron even leading up to the tournament. On ladder, you see it all the time. Why Control Warrior, and why this variant that had such great defensive cards and interesting tech options?
Sure. So Patron, I think, is stronger against aggro decks in general. Like, I think it does better against Zoo, it does better against Paladin, it does better against Druid, but not that much better, I would say. I'd say the newer Control Warrior variants are much better against Druid than they were. But once again, my read on the tournament was that it's more control-based. With how I read the tournament, if I read wrong, I was not going to win. I wasn't even going to come close. But I took a bit of a leap of faith in my deck building, and it really did pay off. So once again, Patron's just not that good against control because generally control decks have good answers to cards like Grim Patron. So whereas control, especially with Elise, you have an alternate win condition aside from fatigue. So I would say control was better. It's a little more consistent against Freeze Mage. It's like a little bit better, I'd say. That was another reason, but that was more of a comfort thing than anything.
All right, and the last deck, of course, is Rogue, a loyalist class. People always criticize Rogue heavily from one side and also praise it from the other. It doesn't surprise me that the 2 players who brought Rogue end up placing in the top 3 both times. What's your opinion on bringing the Rogue deck? It was a very high-risk, high-reward, but ended up paying off.
Yeah, so I think Rogue can be to beat everything in the game, but you can't tech it to beat everything at once. And once again, I think I had a pretty good read that it was mostly going to be a control field. So my Rogue list actually had two piloted Shredders, 2 Violet Teachers, and 2 Sludge Belchers. as well as 2 Hazard Drakes, like the very usual things. And so that's just a lot of meat. And so against even a deck like Control Warrior, like you saw in the finals, I actually feel favored in that matchup. Now, Nostrum didn't have the best draw. He didn't hit very many weapons, but I would say that I was comfortable in that match, even if he were to have had a better draw. So I teched it to beat Control. I'm really always happy to bring Rogue to a tournament. There's a lot of decisions. I feel very comfortable with my Rogue play.
All right, Amnesiac, a lot of people are going to look at your deck lists and think, I want to do that. So they're going to take it to the ladder and try it. Give a couple pieces of advice. Let's say 3 pieces of advice for people trying to do the Amnesiac style on ladder.
I think the best ladder deck that I brought by far would be Druid, and if you're gonna want to play Druid on ladder, I think Mind Control deck's a pretty reasonable substitute for Shade of Naxxramas. It'll help a bit more in aggressive matchups. I would advise against playing a deck like Murloc Paladin or Rogue on ladder. Murloc Paladin just has a lot of really bad matchups on ladder where you have to get quite lucky to win. And Rogue, I mean, if you want to learn Rogue, that's great, but it took me a very long time to become what I would consider to be a fairly proficient Rogue player. So it's probably not the best deck for someone who's looking to really leap into competitive Hearthstone. The Warrior is actually pretty straightforward. I actually think the Warrior list is quite good on ladder. A card like Doomsayer is very underrated, but very good against something like Aggro Shaman, which is generally what I would consider to be a bad matchup for the Warrior.
All right, well, congratulations once again. You're the Winter's champion. We'll see you at BlizzCon, and good luck in the future.